I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
Many years after Princess Diana's death, Prince William discovered an old letter accidentally found in the palace library that changed everything. In those faded lines was the story of a marriage nothing like the fairy tale the world once admired. A lonely Diana, pushed out of her own family, a Charles, trapped between duty and his old love for Camilla. The deeper William dug into the truth, the more he realized his mother may have been manipulated from the very first day she stepped into the palace. The newspaper articles that once destroyed Diana, his father's cold distance, and the name Camilla, none of it ever seemed like a mere coincidence. But the most terrifying thing was not the secret buried for decades. It was that someone inside the royal family was still doing everything possible to keep it from ever seeing the light of day. Would William choose to protect the truth about his mother or protect the very monarchy he was born to inherit? A few days earlier, inside the vast library at Clarence House, Prince William was leafing through old documents. He needed to find some important files related to his recent charity projects. Warm yellow light fell across the towering bookshelves, the atmosphere as solemn as it had been for years. William had no idea that this ordinary moment would open a door straight into the most painful chapter of his family's past. His hand accidentally pulled out an old book with a worn leather cover. As he opened it, a thin sheet of paper slipped out carefully tucked between two printed pages. Familiar handwriting appeared clearly under the lamp. It was his mother's diary, Princess Diana's. William froze, his heart pounding. He immediately recognized the delicate emotional script he had seen in the letters his mother sent him as a child. He sat down in the chair and picked up the page. The shaky lines looked as if Diana had written them through tears. Today is the 30th day after the wedding. Charles barely looks at me. His mind is still completely with Camilla. I feel like a stranger in this palace. The royal family is silent. No one speaks up. They only care about controlling the external image. Queen Elizabeth is the only one who tries to talk to her son, but even she cannot change anything. I am terribly lonely. They have isolated me from the very people closest to me. William clutched the paper so tightly that it crumpled. Each word felt like a sharp knife stabbing straight into his heart. He remembered the images from his childhood clearly, his mother often sitting alone by the window, her gaze distant, the sad smile she tried to hide from her sons. Charles was always busy, rarely home, and when he was, their conversations were superficial. Back then, William was small and thought it was normal for a royal family. Now, everything appeared far clearer. The trust he had placed in his father began to shake violently. Charles, the father he had once respected, the man who always spoke of duty and honor, turned out to be the one who made his mother endure the pain of isolation from the very first days of their marriage. The entire family story he had been taught since childhood now felt distorted. How many other truths had been concealed? Was Queen Elizabeth truly powerless? Or had she also chosen silence to protect the image of the monarchy? William stood up and paced the room with heavy steps. His face darkened, his eyes shining with a mixture of pain and anger. Did Mother really have to suffer like that all alone? He whispered, his voice hoarse. He imagined his mother at 20 years old, beautiful and full of hope, stepping into a marriage whose fate had already been decided. He could not leave the diary page there. William carefully folded it and slipped it into the inner pocket of his vest. He left Clarence House in a contemplative state, driving back to Kensington Palace without saying a word to anyone. On the way, memories flooded back like a tidal wave. The times his mother hugged him and Harry so tightly, as if afraid someone would take them away. The evenings she told fairy tales in a trembling voice, and the forced smile she wore in front of the cameras while her heart was breaking. Back at the palace, William went straight to his private study. He closed the door, sat at his desk, and laid the diary page under the lamp. He read it over and over, feeling his mother's despair in every stroke of the pen. Diana had not only been hounded by the press, but she had been pushed into darkness by the royal machinery itself and by the husband she loved. That night, William did not sleep. He sat there for hours, staring into the darkness outside the window. His anger toward his father grew stronger, but deeper still was the heartache for the mother who had left too soon. That hidden letter was not just an old piece of paper. It was a belated cry for help from eternity, and William knew that from now on, nothing would ever be the same. He made a silent vow he had to find out more. The next morning, William woke up with an even heavier heart. His mother's diary page had haunted him all night, making sleep impossible. Those trembling, tear-stained words of Diana kept echoing in his head. Unable to sit still any longer, he decided to drive straight to Princess Anne's private estate in Gloucestershire. She was the most straightforward and least likely to hide the truth in the royal family. Anne welcomed him in the quiet garden with just 2 cups of hot tea and the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. No elaborate protocol, no entourage. "You have something important to ask me, don't you?" William Anne smiled faintly as she saw the serious expression on her nephew's face, but her eyes already showed clear concern mixed with anticipation. William did not beat around the bush. He took out the diary page and handed it to her solemnly. Anne took it, put on her glasses, and read slowly. Her face gradually grew grave. She remained silent for a long time, then sighed deeply and placed the paper on the old wooden table. "Our family made a serious mistake back then," Anne began, her voice low and tinged with regret. "We prioritized controlling the media and preserving the perfect royal image in front of the public over healing the cracks within the family. The wedding of Charles and Diana was the grandest event of the century, watched by the whole world. But only a few months later, everything began to fall apart. The press kept digging up and mentioning Charles's old relationship with Camilla. Newspapers ran stories day and night, creating tremendous pressure. The entire palace fell into real chaos. No one dared to speak up strongly in defense of Diana. William clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. Childhood memories surged back like a violent wave. He remembered his mother often sitting alone by the large palace window, her eyes sad as she gazed out at the wide courtyard, forcing a smile for her children. Charles was always busy away for weeks at a time, rarely spending time talking to or hugging his sons. "I still remember clearly Mother was always lonely. Father kept his distance and rarely showed affection. I thought it was just normal for a busy royal family." Anne looked at her nephew with deep, sympathetic eyes. Diana faced more pressure from inside the palace than from the press outside. They wanted a princess who fit the royal mold perfectly, but gave her no space to breathe or adapt. Charles was deeply influenced by Camilla. She never truly left him, even if officially their relationship had ended. William lifted his head, his voice trembling with emotion. So my parents' marriage was being manipulated from behind the scenes, right from the start. It didn't just fall apart naturally, as everyone thought. Did Mother really have to endure everything alone in that vast palace? Anne nodded gently, not avoiding the truth. Sometimes the truth is harsh and painful. Diana tried very hard to save the marriage, but she was pushed into a dark corner with almost no one truly standing up to protect her. Queen Elizabeth also tried, but she couldn't change much. William left Anne's estate as the sun climbed high. His heart felt weighed down with stones. Anne's words cut like sharp knives, confirming every suspicion growing inside him. His trust in his father was now shaking violently. His parents' marriage was not merely a common romantic tragedy. It had been controlled, manipulated, and silently buried from the very first days. And William knew clearly that his journey to uncover the truth had only just begun. He gripped the steering wheel tightly and silently vowed he would not stop here. Going back in time to the dazzling yet tragic months right after the royal wedding in 1981. To the outside world, Charles and Diana were the perfect fairy tale couple. Millions cheered, flags and flowers filled the streets of London as they appeared on the Buckingham Palace balcony. Yet once the camera flashes faded behind the cold palace walls, everything was completely different. Charles had never truly ended things with Camilla. Even though he had just married the young, beautiful woman the entire nation had hoped for, he continued to keep in regular contact, even private meetings with the woman he called his closest confidant. Camilla quickly recognized Charles's weaknesses. She began subtly planting seeds of doubt in his ear, day after day, hour after hour. "Diana is still too young, too immature," Camilla would whisper during their long phone calls. "She's just an emotional girl who changes easily. How can she possibly shoulder the role of future queen? She will only disappoint you." Those words were repeated by Camilla with great skill and calculation, yet extremely effective on a man already burdened by royal duty. Charles gradually wavered. He had already been hesitant before the wedding. Now his old feelings pulled him back strongly. The distance between him and Diana grew wider. Arguments erupted more frequently inside the palace. Diana would cry alone in the large bedroom, soaking her pillow with tears, while Charles turned to Camilla to share his heart and seek comfort. Just as the marriage began to crack seriously, a wave of negative rumors about Diana suddenly flooded the newspapers. Stories about her volatile temper, fabricated affairs, depression, and unstable mental health appeared thick and fast at exactly the right moments, as if an invisible hand was directing the script. Diana was gradually isolated completely. Palace staff began keeping their distance, avoiding her eyes. Her close friends were rarely invited. Charles grew colder, rarely comforting his wife, and even openly criticized Diana in front of others. Queen Elizabeth was not blind to these cracks. She had arranged several private meetings between father and son, trying to advise Charles sternly yet with love. "You must take responsibility for your wife," the Queen said one cold winter evening. "This is not just a personal marriage, Charles. It is a responsibility to the kingdom and to my 2 grandsons." But Charles was already too dependent on Camilla. His feelings were so strong that he could not or would not break them off. The Queen was left powerless to watch her son's marriage slide toward collapse. In the final years of the marriage, Diana was completely exhausted mentally. In her deepest despair, she wrote the most honest and painful pages of her diary. She described her terrible loneliness, the pain of betrayal, and the feeling of being rejected by the entire royal system. It was Diana herself who carefully tucked those diary pages into her favorite book, hoping that one day her son would find them and understand the truth. Later, the book was lost among thousands of documents in the vast royal archives. William sat alone in his study, reading through the documents and memories he had gathered, overwhelmed with indescribable emotion. He pictured his mother at that time, a beautiful young woman full of hope and love, being systematically pushed into darkness. It was not only the press hounding her not only malicious public opinion, but her own husband and the forces inside the palace that had manipulated the marriage from its roots. That fairy tale marriage had not fallen apart naturally. It had been twisted, controlled, and steered toward its tragic end from the very beginning. And William realized more clearly than ever, his mother was not merely the victim of a love triangle. She was the victim of an entire system that chose to protect its image and interests rather than protect a living, breathing human being. He clenched his fist, his eyes determined under the golden lamp. The truth was slowly emerging, and he would not stop until everything was brought to light. After the deeply unsettling conversation with Princess Anne, William could not sit still. The suspicions inside him grew like a fire that could not be extinguished. He spent night after night poring over hundreds of old newspaper articles from the 1980s and 1990s in his private study at Kensington Palace. The desk lamp cast a pale yellow glow on the computer screen, and thick stacks of documents. The air in the room was stifling, broken only by the click of the mouse and his occasional sighs. William discovered something extremely suspicious. Many of the articles attacking Diana, rumors about her volatile temper, baseless accusations of affairs, and analyses of her unstable mental health, all came from the same group of journalists. They worked for several major newspapers, but always shared an anonymous source from inside the palace. The articles appeared at exactly the moments when his parents' marriage was under the greatest strain, as if an invisible hand was orchestrating every step. "This cannot be a coincidence," William whispered, clenching his fist. He printed dozens of articles carefully noting dates and content. Each line hurt him more as he imagined his mother reading those things while isolated in the palace. With fierce determination, William acted in secret. Through a completely trusted friend, he arranged a meeting with Michael Hargreaves, an elderly retired journalist who had been a leading royal correspondent in the 90s. The meeting took place on a drizzly afternoon at a small discreet cafe on the outskirts of London. Hargreaves arrived wearing a pulled-down cap, his eyes avoiding contact. At first, the man hesitated, his hands shaking as he held his coffee cup. "Your Highness, I don't want to dig up the past." But when William showed him Diana's diary page and the evidence he had collected, Hargreaves could no longer deny it. "Your Highness, I am not proud of what I did," Hargreaves said hoarsely, his voice full of remorse. "I accepted money to publish articles that harmed Princess Diana. Not once, many times. They paid very well along with implicit pressure. I needed money for my family, so I did it." William leaned forward, his voice cold and sharp. "Who was behind it? You must tell the truth." Hargreaves was silent for a long time, then sighed heavily. "It was Camilla. She didn't contact me directly, but through a trusted intermediary. At that time, Camilla was not yet a prominent figure, so no one paid attention to her. They wanted Diana to appear weak in the eyes of the public and inside the palace. The goal was to make Charles grow tired of his wife, push her aside, so Camilla could take her place. Everything was calculated very carefully. William felt blood rush to his face. Anger mixed with pain made him take a deep breath to stay calm. "So they used the media as a weapon to destroy my mother. My parents' marriage didn't just fall apart naturally." "That's correct, Your Highness." Hargreaves nodded, his face full of regret. "Camilla was very clever. She knew how to use the press to kill someone's reputation without leaving clear traces." William left the meeting with a thicker new file of documents and a cold confirmation in his heart. He continued gathering more evidence, old bank transfer receipts, internal emails, and confidential statements from retired palace staff. Each new lead pulled him deeper into the dark truth. The more he dug, the more certain he became. His mother was not just the victim of a love triangle. She had been the target of a systematic, meticulously orchestrated campaign. That night, William stood at his desk, staring at a photo of his young mother, beautiful and full of hope. Tears rolled down his face uncontrollably. "Mother endured so much that I never knew. I'm sorry it took me so long." He knew he could not stop. Once he had enough solid evidence, William decided he would confront his father directly. Charles had to hear the truth, and Camilla had to face what she had done for so many years. William's journey to follow the trail was not only about seeking justice for his mother. It was how he confronted the past and a turning point that could completely change the future of the British monarchy. However, news of William digging through old documents spread like wildfire inside the palace. Within less than 48 hours, Camilla knew everything. She was sitting in her private room at Highgrove when her personal assistant entered, voice trembling with the report. Camilla's face instantly turned pale, her hand gripping the phone until her knuckles whitened. Her heart pounded. She understood better than anyone if the truth came out, everything she had spent decades building would collapse in an instant. The image of the gentle, devoted queen consort, the woman who had saved Charles after his painful marriage, all of it would vanish into thin air. The public would see her as a home wrecker, a cold and calculating woman. Camilla could not let that happen. That very evening, she acted decisively. Camilla secretly arranged an emergency meeting with 3 former Royal Crisis Communications advisors from the 90s. The meeting took place in a discreet private house on the outskirts of London. No recordings, no witnesses, not even bright lights. "You must remain absolutely silent," Camilla said, her voice ice cold, but revealing clear panic. "William is digging up everything from the past. If any of you breathe a single word, I will not forgive you. You know exactly what I am capable of." The elderly man nodded rapidly, but everyone in the room could feel the fear hanging heavy. Camilla did not stop at threats. She ordered her most loyal staff to search the royal archives. Within 2 days, dozens of important documents related to Diana internal memos, private letters, meeting records, and personal notes suddenly disappeared without a trace. Some electronic files were also wiped clean. But these hasty cover-up actions backfired powerfully. Charles was not easily fooled. He began noticing irregularities when some familiar files he had once accessed were no longer in their usual places. When he asked the staff, they became evasive and answered vaguely. Charles observed silently for a few more days, then decided to confront her directly. He summoned Camilla to a private meeting in the large library at Balmoral, where no one dared disturb them. "What are you doing?" Camilla Charles asked bluntly, his voice weary yet sharper than ever. "Don't think I don't know." Camilla initially tried to deny it. She turned her face away, her voice slightly shaking. "You're imagining things. William is just curious about his mother, nothing serious." Charles stepped closer, looking straight into her eyes. "I know you met with the old advisors. I know documents are disappearing. Now tell me the truth. Don't disappoint me again." The atmosphere in the library grew suffocating. Camilla remained silent for a long time, her shoulders trembling. Finally, she collapsed. She slumped into the chair, tears streaming down her face, having undergone many surgeries. "I couldn't accept losing you," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "I loved you so much I couldn't stand sharing you. I couldn't let Diana take you away. I tried to push her aside. I used the media whispers, everything I had. I just wanted us to be together forever." Charles stood stunned, as if struck by lightning. For the first time in many years, he clearly saw the terrible consequences of his own weakness and silence. He had allowed his wife to be hurt, allowed his 2 sons to grow up amid lies and suspicion, all because he dared not face his true feelings. "You destroyed a family," Charles said quietly, his voice filled with pain and disappointment. "And I let you do it. I stayed silent for too long." Camilla tried to plead, clutching his hand. "We've come too far, Charles. Don't let everything collapse because of the past. Please think of us." But Charles pulled his hand away decisively. For the first time, he stood with William. He looked at Camilla with unfamiliar eyes and said a sentence that sent chills down her spine. "I can no longer cover this up. The truth must be told. And I will not protect you this time." While Camilla panicked and tried every way to keep her position and reputation, Charles made his final decision. He would meet William. He would confess everything. And he would end the lies that had lasted for decades. The real storm had only just begun to sweep through the British royal family. A few days later, on a drizzly afternoon at Balmoral, Charles and William met in a private library room. No advisors, no photographers, no one else knew. just father and son facing each other after years of concealment. Charles sat on the old leather chair, looking older and more exhausted than ever. He looked at his eldest son, his voice hoarse. "You already know almost everything, don't you, William?" William nodded, his eyes determined yet full of emotion. He placed his mother's diary page on the table. "I know Mother was isolated from the very first days. I know Camilla was behind many things. And I know you allowed it all to happen." Charles bowed his head, his hands clenched into fists. He was silent for a long time before speaking. His voice trembling, "I was too blind. I loved Camilla so much that I believed everything she said about your mother. She told me Diana was too young, too fragile, unworthy to be queen. I let those words sink in. I allowed the marriage to fall apart without intervening. I knew the media was being manipulated, knew there were paid articles smearing your mother, but I didn't dare to stop it. I was afraid of losing everything." William listened with surging emotions. Tears rolled down his face. He remembered his mother, the strong yet always lonely woman who tried to smile in public while her heart was shattered. Mother was not only a victim of the press or the royal family. She was a victim of your weakness and Camilla's scheming. She endured everything alone for so many years. Charles looked up, his eyes red. "I'm sorry, William. I'm sorry for not protecting your mother." The atmosphere in the room was heavy enough to suffocate. William stood up, paced a few steps, then stopped at the window looking out at the rainy garden. He did not want to make the entire truth public. Such a major crisis could shake the very foundations of the monarchy that his grandparents had worked so hard to preserve. But he also could not let things continue as before. "I will not make everything public," William said slowly, his voice resolute. "I don't want the royal family to fall into chaos. But I demand that you take action. Camilla must leave her royal position. You must divorce her and revoke all her titles and official roles." Charles looked at his son in surprise, but then nodded. This time, he did not hesitate. "I agree." A few weeks later, Buckingham Palace shook in silence. Charles officially announced his divorce from Camilla. She was stripped of her title as Queen Consort and all royal roles. The public was only told it was due to irreconcilable differences, but inside the royal family, everyone understood this was the result of Prince William's quiet investigation. William stood alone in the garden at Kensington Palace, looking at the statue of Diana glistening in the sunlight. He placed a bouquet of fresh flowers at the memorial and whispered, "Mother, I have done at least part of what you deserved. I will not let history repeat itself." The story did not end in a glorious victory, but in belated healing. William realized that sometimes, to protect the future, one must have the courage to face the darkest past. And he had done that. If you were William after learning the truth about your mother and Camilla's manipulation, would you choose to make everything public or stay silent to protect the royal family? Why? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy.